All right. First off, Kalalal Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakodash. That is to say, all praises to Yahweh, the true name of the Father. All right. To Yahweh Shai, the true name of the Son of the Holy Father, Bahashem Rakakodash, which is through the Holy Spirit. You know, double honors and salutations to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who continue to lead us in this truth, right, in this walk of life, lead us to the path of life. Great men who were set up, to feed the flock, of Israel, the elect of Israel. Salutation and much love also to my fellow laborers who are in the vineyard, risking their lives, for this truth, for what we believe in, for that penny a day that we all, so diligently seek. you know, Blessings and peace also to the elect of Israel, the men, women, and children whom the Lord will have mercy upon on his return. This lesson is going to be focused on the possibility and the eventuality of famine, not just in Jamaica, but I'm going to focus on Jamaica today. You know, the eventuality of famine here in Jamaica, and I'm going to focus on why that will be one of the key reasons why that will be, and that is our dependence on imported food. Much like many countries know, modern countries know, so-called modern countries know, we are heavily dependent, on imported food for our survival. For example, rice and peas is a Sunday tradition here in Jamaica. Neither the rice nor the peas is grown here. Ackee and saltfish is our quote-unquote national dish. Saltfish is imported. We import a lot of the things that we eat, even things that we grow here, we still import. So we are heavily dependent, on global trade, for our survival. And the angle I want to push, is that during wartime or during cases of severe global emergency, certain food supply lines will be abandoned. Certain blockades will be set up. It will be difficult to move food between nations. So global trade will be severely impacted because, I mean, you don't know if a food supply ship is carrying ammunitions for your enemies or your allies. So all these different things will affect the ability of this country specifically, to import food and thus to feed its population, resulting in famine. Many of the people here in Jamaica are not aware of this, but your supermarkets are restocked every 3 to 4 days. You know, the big container ships that come to Kingston Wharf, and some big trucks go down there and they fill up, on goods from the containers, and they take them to your supermarket, and that's where you are, or your wholesale, or Mega Mart, or Price Mart, those big shopping centers, and you go and you shop, and you don't think twice about how those goods got to you, or the possibility of you going there and the goods are not there, because they've been stopped for some reason. You've never had to experience that, but throughout history, there are many examples of countries who've faced famine, due to food shortages, whether unintentionally or maliciously due to sieges and blockades, military blockades. But either way, there will be, there will be a shortage of food here on the island, not just Jamaica, but throughout the world. Famine will be a very real thing, right? That countries will have to contend with, right? So first, I want to bring out three articles that were written in a Jamaican newspaper regarding Jamaica's dependence on imported food, right? And they were written in different times. So one was written in 2012, one was written, I believe, in 20. Let's see when this one was written, 2014, and then the third one was written in 2016. So each of them 2 years apart, addressing the same issue. Right. So this one was from the Jamaica Observer, published Sunday, June 17th, 2012. Regrettably, Jamaica's dependence on imported food continues to increase, each year, signaling several dangers, beginning with the fact that in an emergency we could not feed ourselves. I want you to let that sink in. Beginning with the fact that in an emergency we could not feed ourselves, right? Such an emergency exists and is imminent, right? And that is the occurrence of World War III, right? Which we've been prophesying about, for years, because the scriptures prophesied, the third war written in Revelation, you know, this thing is coming. We see the conflicts that are going on over there in the Middle East between America and the Middle East countries. We see the conflicts between US and Russia and China. We see even conflicts between America and the EU, showing you that Revelation 18 is going to be fulfilled as well, and 17, right? So let's continue. It says, such an emergency, while possible, is unlikely, right? And this author doesn't know much about biblical prophecies, right? This emergency is not only likely, but it is imminent and inevitable, right? It says, but a more immediate danger is that a global shortage of an imported food, which is a staple of our diet, could pose severe hardships on our nutritional and financial terms. So I'm going to continue in this much, right? I'm going to bring out other articles, you know, to show you that this thing is an ongoing thing, right? I'll post the articles in post production so brothers can see them and read through for themselves. But I just wanted to hit the main points, right? So the main point here is that in an emergency, we could not feed ourselves, right? So we jump on to the next one, also written in the Jamaica Observer, right? March 19th, 2014. So a full 2 years later, almost 2 years later, our dependence on imported food is very unwise. We return to an issue today which cannot be stressed enough, especially as we don't seem anywhere nearer to resolving our difficulties. In ancient times, every society had to produce enough food to feed its population or face almost certain starvation. As trade develops, societies that could not produce enough food indulge in barter, exchanging non-food goods for food produced by others. Right? It says, or bought food by paying with gold. In modern world, countries produce some of their food and import the rest. Countries that do not have enough arable land, meaning farmable land, right, import most of their food. Example, Singapore. In some cases, their challenge is excessive population. Example, China. In this milieu, the goal of food self-sufficiency has been abandoned because it is assumed that importation of food will always be a possibility. And that's it. That's the key right there, yo. Right? We assume, and most countries assume, that the importation of food will always be a possibility, yo. Right? The world doesn't always plan, for a world war. Countries don't always plan for a world war. Jamaica is, of course, is an example of that, right? It shows you that we don't plan for that, or else we wouldn't be so dependent upon imported food. And then we could go into the conversation to say that the fact that we are so dependent on imported food is actually tailored by the WTO, and other and the IMF and the World Bank and other financial and food agencies that have forced Jamaica, and not only Jamaica but other Caribbean countries, into a position where they are dependent and they are vulnerable, both economically, and food wise, right? So we don't know, or our politicians seemingly don't know, that importation of food is not always a possibility, right? And the possibility, and not the possibility, the eventuality and the inevitability of world war will make the importation of food impossible, right? Some countries, and Jamaica is a prime example, are dependent on food, imported food, for the staple items in their diet, and so import a large share of their food requirement. Jamaica's high and increasing level of dependence on imported food is unwise and risky, right? Jamaica, even more deplorable is that this sorry state of affairs does not have to be so. Jamaica is not producing as much food as it could, despite the grand announcement, promises, and predictions by our ministers of agriculture. Local food production continues to struggle, and the thing is, it's not up to us, right? The situation that we're in has been crafted by the world powers, yo, right? Jamaica or any other so-called third world countries, Jake was never meant to be self-sufficient, yo. Grenada was trying that. Look what happened to Grenada in 1983. It was invaded, yo. Right? Continuing, Jamaica's dependence on imported food has several dangers, beginning with the fact that in an emergency we could not feed ourselves, and here the thought has been repeated. Right? It says climate change with more frequent and more severe weather, such as droughts, floods, can severely affect the supply of food available on the global market. And notice here, no one is still talking about the possibility of war, which we're gonna get to. But let's tap into the last article here. It was written May 30, 2016, another 2 years later. It was written in the Jamaica Gleaner this time. Right? It says murder continues to stalk us and politicians continue to bamboozle us with vague promises while we walk as lambs to the slaughter. If only you knew, how true that was, yo. Unquestionably, prosperity is enjoyed by an elite few while the masses get poorer and poorer. Mason's hope that we may have leaders to motivate the country to produce is unlikely. The problem is that we are a small country with declining mineral resources, limited land space for large scale farming, and semi literate labor force. Right? It says, unfortunately, we are a country dependent on imports for survival. Right? Consequently, with imports outspacing exports, we struggle with a depreciating dollar and a creeping inflation. Right? So now we're going to bring out an article from 1914 to 1918 online.net, International Encyclopedia of the First World War. Right? So it says here, Allied capacity at sea to sustain global transport and supply determined their ability to prevail in the First World War. So we're going to go down here to global supply. It says, why did war in the 20th century challenge so completely global supply lines? To answer this question, one must first comprehend how thoroughly dependent Europeans had become on overseas supplies of basic materials, including food. Right? Does that sound familiar? Britain imported 100% of its sugar, cocoa, and chocolate, 79% of its grain, 64.5% of its butter, and 40% of its meat. Nearly two-thirds of the caloric intake of the British people came from abroad. Supplies of industrial materials such as cotton, oil, or rubber were completely dependent on imports. And it's not just food, we import medicine, we import pharmaceuticals, to quote unquote treat our people, right? So it says imports provided a large share of the ore or our metals worked by British factories. Three-quarters of the wool woven in British mills shipped in from overseas, right? So you're pretty much getting the point. Europe was severely dependent on imported goods for survival, right? And what happened? Many of the major cities, right, experienced famine, right? Whether because it was difficult, to completely service the global supply lines, or because of military blockades, or because of sieges. All these different things affected a country's ability or a city's ability to feed its citizens, right? And it's the same thing that's gonna come here to the Caribbean, to Jamaica, to you people, right? But you don't see it coming. This is Lamentations chapter 4, and I'll start from verse 8. It says, their visage, meaning their face, their look, is blacker than a coal. Right? They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. Why? Because they're hungry, yo. It is withered. It has become like a stick. They that be slain with sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. Right? For these pine away, stricken through for want of the fields, of the fruit of the field. Salakia. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. Right? This is an historical fact, right? And it's something that will be repeated. Yo, let's look up that word sudden. Right? Let's look up that word sudden and see what it means. All right, so the word sudden is the Hebrew word bashal. It says to boil, to cook, to bake, to roast, to ripen, to grow ripe, to boil, to cook. Right? So women, pitiful women who were hungry, starving, boiled, cooked, baked their own children. They were their food in the destruction of the daughter of my people. This will reoccur, when this war breaks out. People will eat each other, yo. it's unfathomable right now. It's unfathomable to look at your kid and say, all right, it's possible that I might eat this person, right? Or that person. It's unfathomable, right? But it's a possibility and it's an eventuality and an inevitability, right? When this war breaks out, yo. Right, moving on. Ezekiel chapter 5, and I'll start with verse 16. When I shall send upon them the evil arrows of famine, which shall be for their destruction, and which I will send to destroy you, and I will increase the famine upon you and break your staff of bread, right? Meaning your food supply. So will I send upon you famine and evil beasts, and they shall bereave thee, and pestilence and blood shall pass through thee, and I will bring the sword upon thee, for I, the Lord, have spoken it. So ultimately, when we're speaking of these things that's going to happen, world war, the famine that comes with it, the mandatory implementation of the chip, which this is another way that the chip can be mandatory implemented, right? For you to get your rations, you're gonna have to get some type of tag, right? And the elder brother Raquarcom did a video, a few weeks back, a couple months back, when he showed the example of the Russian cards that the Britons got during, I believe I'm not sure if the First or Second World War, but you had to get rations or a ration card, and that pretty much recorded the food that you got, on a daily basis, So in modern times, no, right? We don't need a ration card. All you're gonna need is that chip. That's all you're gonna need, right? And you're gonna have to be forced to choose between either taking that chip, or watching your family die, or possibly eating your family because of the famine, right? That the law gonna bring. Right? This is 2 Ezra chapter 16, verse 21. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case. And that's what's happening right now. It's so easy for us to depend on food, and it's so easy for us to forget and not think about the possibility of global trade or import being impossible, right? It's not easy for us to imagine a scenario where we wouldn't be able to import the things that we need, right? So it doesn't come to mind. So we think ourselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. All these things are growing right now, but people don't see it, right? The other day when they assassinated the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, what did people do? So-called Black Twitter. They made memes about it. They made fun of the situation, not knowing the terror that this will bring, right? Not appreciating the terror that this will bring. All right, let me get 2 Ezra 15. There's another precept I wanted to bring out in there before I wrap up. All right, 2 Ezra 15. And I'll start at verse 18. It says, For because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity on his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. At first, it will be you protecting your family. Then after a while, you're going to realize that you can't feed you and your family. So you're going to be all about you. And it's very easy, right, for human beings when deprived of food to reduce to their baser instinct, right? People don't think about it, but it's very easy, right? We wrap up with another one. Another one came in the spirit. Isaiah 9. Isaiah 9, and I'll start at verse 18. For wickedness burneth as a fire, it shall devour the briars and thorns, and shall kindle the thickets of the forest, and they shall mount up like lifting of the smoke. Though the wrath of the Lord be kindled, the wrath of the Lord of hosts, so like I'm reading it over. Though the wrath of the Lord of hosts is the land, to the wrath of the Lord of hosts is the land darkened, and people shall be as fuel to the fire, no man shall spare his brother. That fuel to the fire that's talking about is the thermonuclear fire, right? That's gonna destroy especially America, right? No man shall spare his brother, and he shall snatch on the right hand and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left hand, and they shall not be satisfied. They shall eat every man the flesh of his own arm. So not only will you eat each other, you will eat yourselves, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to bring out. Hopefully it was edifying. Kalalal Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Akakadash, forgive me the spirit to do this lesson. Hopefully it was edifying. Shalom. Keep pushing.